start with your name and your age.
My name is Chris Sharp. am 48 years old. I have been using red light therapy since the winter of 2019.
How did you start with red light therapy? What got you interested?
Well, actually, Terry Simpson actually introduced red light therapy to myself and my wife.
Okay. And was there, for you, what was going on with you guys at that time? I recall what I observed at that time. Tell me a little bit about what you were feeling was going on at that time, and where were you guys at in your lives?
Well, I can speak more to myself about myself here. I have struggled with being dual diagnosis, and part of that is having a PTSD, bipolar disorder, ADHD, as well as a chemical dependency. I was introduced into red light therapy by Terry down in Martinez, California, and I was very skeptical of whether or not it would be something effective. In fact, I more or less was using it initially to humor my wife and to humor Terry. But it wasn't very long before I had actually started achieving benefits from it. Um, once Terry opened up a small office in Vacaville, I had started using it more regularly. My wife had experienced many benefits, such as pain relief from an autoimmune condition and a nerve condition. And she was able to manage her symptoms better. She went from being on a walker to a cane to being able to walk without any devices within 6 months of her using it. But in the first couple months of me using it, I noticed that I started having better sleep quality. My moods were more regulated, and my need for substances had been drastically reduced, to where I had actually conquered an addiction that I had for the upwards of 30 years with its help. Also, I've been able to better manage seasonal affective disorder. I have been able to not fall into as long and deep of slumps from depression. So it helped me a lot in a very short period of time. Probably within the first few months of using it, I could say that I enjoyed all of those benefits.
Wonderful. Well, you know what I know, Chris, is that I saw within a couple of months changes, and you were sharing some of those changes, but you are also someone who wants to deeply understand things, and you're not one to buy into snake oil or placebos. So when did you actually start really researching it, not just hearing what Terry was telling you about what was going on, but when did you really start researching it, and what did you find fascinating when you did?
Okay. The I started researching it through Ari Whitten's book, The Ultimate Guide to Red Light Therapy. I am a skeptic by nature, and especially considering we were trying to treat my wife's health issues that had ran our lives for 6 years. Um, and the medical community had failed us horribly in the process,
Right.
and basically threw up their hands and just said, here's basically a bunch of different medications. You're probably not going to get any better. This might help you manage it. Um, and so I took into some degree some offense to this very suggestion that red light therapy, a red light, would end up helping her condition, and even greater offense that the potential that it could help mine. So I started reading the book, and it started making sense to me about how this would affect me on the cellular level, the cascading effect of benefits that come from healthier cells, that the health cells are made healthier through the production of ATP. So how this occurs is that the red and near infrared light penetrate the skin and the tissues to come into contact with the cells. The mitochondria in the cell transduces the light energy into adenosine triphosphate, ATP, which then um, helps make a healthier cell, a more energized cell, which then produces healthier RNA in the nucleus. Uh, and this, just as I said, it creates a cascading effect throughout the body or every cell that it comes in contact with. And because of the way um, it works, I have been able to enjoy those benefits.
Wonderful. And when you have a red light session, what is your feeling before your red light session and after your red light session?
Well, I have just gotten done with a red light session, and I was a little bit stressed and agitated before getting on. I came out feeling very relaxed. I get into this strange state, which is like kind of in between being conscious and asleep. It's almost like you're on, like, have a twilight sleep effect, like
Right,
you're on some
right.
form of um, what is that? Uh, uh, Hopefully, you're ready to descript. uh, yeah, which is uh, like anesthesia. It's like almost like being in a state of anesthesia, and it's incredibly relaxing to the mind and the body, and usually has a relaxing effect afterwards that I can enjoy for the better part of a day.
That's wonderful. So let's talk about the mind for a minute. I think that's, you have a lot of information at your disposal about red light therapy. You've been wonderful enough to share that with me and educate me, things that you're learning about red light. Uh, I appreciate you being vulnerable enough to tell us your story about your diagnosis, your PTSD, the bipolar chemical dependency. That's all very vulnerable, um, uh, and personal for you to be talking about that. So thank you very much for sharing that, because I want people out there to know that this is a modality that could be very beneficial for them. Certainly can't hurt. You and I have both joked, how does shining a light on anything, how can shining a light on anything have this kind of effect? And yet it does. And yet it does. So let's talk about the science in the mind, because we do know that the brain is very, very dense in mitochondria. So our eyes are very dense in mitochondria, as our brains are very dense in mitochondria. So being able to feed those cells in our brain and being able to increase, like we said, the ATP. So tell me what you think is going on that creates these mental well-being effects for you when you're wrapped, your body is wrapped, and maybe you have it over your face. What's going on that it's helping your brain?
Well, part of it is the increased production of melatonin. It also probably has to do with the production of serotonin, um, increased dopamine production. Um, and also, I would imagine you probably have an increase in endocannabinoids being produced inside the brain. These things are all um, neurotransmitters and hormones that the the pharmacological industry is trying to produce through the use of their medications. The difference is you don't have the harmful side effects associated with what you would with those medications. I am by no means advocating for somebody all of a sudden to take a drastic change and get off all their medications and try red light therapy. By no means am I advocating that. but it can be something complementary, and it may be something for somebody to explore if they're wanting to reduce the amount of medications that they are taking. Um, I think personally that this is something that should be used in the um, recovery community for people who aren't able to calm themselves down or have that initial restless irritability that comes with early like sobriety. I think this is something that is very effective for anxiety issues. Like I have a lot of historically have had a lot of anxiety, and doing a session completely relieves me of that anxiety. The supported sleep improvements from red light therapy. I mean, the long term effects of it helping you increase melatonin production versus using melatonin, which, if you regularly use melatonin, will reduce your body's ability to naturally produce the melatonin. It also does not have uh, um, side effect of being addictive in a harmful way, like benzodiazepines, sleep medications, and such. It doesn't have the effect of causing grogginess the next day, unlike benzodiazepines and sleep aids and such.
Right,
Um,
right, right.
so it's definitely something to be considered supplementally, at least initially. You know,
So I would imagine with your story that prior to red light coming in your life, you weren't someone who was looking for much in the way of self-care. So do you want to talk about self-care for yourself and what things you've tried, and when did self-care become self-important?
well, I don't know how you could say a 360-pound depressed man who had a real problem with alcohol could not care, be much into self-care. I mean, it's just absurd. Um, no, this is part of the beautiful part about the red light therapy is a catalyst. It is a catalyst for change, and it is one of the smallest changes that you can make that yields large effects after continuous use. Um, I went from using red light therapy to all of a sudden making changes in my diet. From the having better sleep, I was able to start exercising. And over time, I have lost the upwards of 90 pounds
Fantastic.
as a result of it. And
Fantastic.
I tell you one thing, if you're a depressed person and have problems feeling bad about yourself, losing a significant amount of weight and being able to get around makes you not feel as bad about yourself. Being able to do more, having more energy, um, you know, kind of a better outlook. I mean, you know, how can shining a light on somebody change so much? Well, it can brighten your perspective in the long run.
Right. Right. It's certainly one of the things I've noticed about clients is how quickly they start to report changes. Do you remember how quickly you started to note it? Being a skeptic, did you allow yourself to note it? Or did it take a while before you really like something's really going on here?
I would say that the initial month or two of me using it had me, well, first I was like, there's something happening after a few sessions. I couldn't put my finger on it. I thought placebo, you know. Um, and then it is undeniable the change that started happening, like the cascade of change that we started beginning. And then doing the research at the same time, the research papers, reading the book, it started indicating to me that, oh, this is something real. This is not just woo, you
Yeah.
know. Um,
Yeah.
so I'd say I started yielding the most benefits within 3 months of starting. in terms of mood, energy levels, sleep. I would say that started happening pretty quickly within the first 3 months. The loss of weight, I mean, I started losing weight so quickly once I started having higher energy levels and was able to start getting myself to move. And it was almost it was almost like um, there was no choice but to change with it, you know. It was like it was a natural process just falling into those changes. It
Sort of
wasn't like
stepping into a flow, right? It's just
right,
carrying you away. It's like,
right,
first you're dipping your toe in, all of a sudden you find yourself in the stream, and pretty soon you're being carried by this wonderful, lazy river, right? Yeah.
yeah.
That's
And you are lit.